This is the actual card. So this is a Mike Trout draft.
That's the actual card that went for $250,000.
This is the actual card that won live today.
There could be someone just barges through the window and like robs that live. At least we have it on footage.
Yeah, we also have Max here, and he's a tall glass of water, so he really protects all the assets in office.
Yeah, we're recording. All right, welcome everybody. Rally Road, Rob Petrozzo. We're friends, and am I butchered the name?
No, you're the only person who from day one has always gotten it right, so I appreciate it, man. I butchered Lisden. I did it for like a year.
I still get it. My wife calls me Lidzen. She gets it wrong. She puts the N and the D in the wrong way still. I think it's when she says
every now and then I do it. No, you're the only person who's always gotten it right, so I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you.
So you're in the Soho office store / bunker. What's it look like out the window there? Is the fire station working?
Yeah, I'm looking out the window right now. They're all outside drinking coffee and hanging out in the neighborhood. This is like, Soho has gotten back to the point that Fridays is like a hangout day for, I feel like, everybody except us. So we just look out the window, everybody's strolling around, saying their hellos, drinking coffee, and we're in here working and just waiting from a distance.
But that was the center of the center of the riots, or the center of what you would call, what were you calling it at the time? Because you didn't know.
I mean, it was like, they were calling it it was civil unrest was what the news would say, but realistically when it got really bad here, and it was like, there was a couple scary moments, and our block was very much like the ground zero of it a little bit.
Yeah.
It was like a bunch of young kids that, saw an opportunity and were just breaking windows, and they robbed a few stores, but we're on this very specific block where, one block north of us is the Supreme store and a bunch of other big and G-Star, like big clothing retailers that everybody knows. One block south of us is all like the really well-known restaurants in the neighborhood. So we're this like strip that has this mix of a place where it's always busy and full of people. So when everybody was gone, nothing was boarded up yet, but you have StockX across the street, which had, $20 million worth of sneakers in it. And you had the Supreme store, which had just closed, but people didn't know any better, and they were trying to rob that too. So if nobody's here and there's some like young kids who probably don't think about consequences the same way and a little bit opportunist, it became an opportunity, and the block got a little bit crazy for a week. We got lucky. We were the only store on the entire block that had no damage. Everyone else got broken into except us, so it worked out for us, but the neighborhood was a little bit tough for a minute.
So let's before we dive into the narrative of collectibles and what you guys are doing, tell everybody a little about, because Rally Road has a lot of news this week. We're in October, it's 2020. The markets have had a crazy year. And like today you sold a baseball card for, that I invested in. It's like the snowflake of baseball cards, I said.
That was the right way to put it. Yeah,
I don't think I've even seen this guy play. Like that's how.
Yeah, this is the actual card. So this is a Mike Trout draft.
That's the actual card that went for $250,000.
This is the actual card that won live today.
There could be someone just barges through the window and like robs that live. At least we have it on footage.
Yeah, we also have Max here, and he's a tall glass of water, so he really protects all the assets in office. But
so that's cool. So you've got the actual. Can we? Let me just take a picture of that. Hang on. Pull that up. Hang on.
I got bad light.
Good enough.
So there's 25 of these in the world, and this
25?
particular one is one of the highest graded versions, and it's Mike Trout, who I think a lot of people look at as potentially being like the next Babe Ruth. So everything we do at Rally is try and find like the best example of the best players or the best era or the best sort of time frame. And this week we had a lot going on. It was obviously, as you said, we had our newest fundraising round, which we closed 17 million from a bunch of awesome investors. Obviously, Social Leverage is someone that's been super supportive from day one, and that was kind of set the table for us to be able to go to the Raptor groups of the world. And we had Alex Ohanian join us, and Global Brain from Japan, and a bunch of Porsche came in, which is something that from day one for us has always been sort of a goal to get one of the big manufacturers in. So the past for us has been a lot of try and find the best quality assets, put them on the platform, let anyone invest in them. Now we're getting closer to a point with the Topps deal that we did recently, which was a collaboration with Topps, talking to Porsche about what the future might hold, working with some of these big names, the heritage brands in the space, to create brand new future collectible assets for the platform and for our investors specifically. So that's kind of been the focus, at least, for what the next sort of 6 to 12 months look like for us. And we brought in a bunch of awesome investors on this round that can support that mission.
So I mean, we've talked about this in a podcast before, and I'll link to it. So where are we at in the narrative now? What's changed in the last year?
I mean, this was the craziest swing for me as an adult, like, and for our business, I think that we would have ever anticipated. So you have March, which for us, it was slow and steady, building the brand, building the narrative, and building the assets under management for a good 6-month window, first half of the year, 5-month window. And then, what happens is the whole world stops, the rug gets pulled out, no one's sure what's going to happen. This is before the equity markets bounce back, and I think all the money froze a little bit, and that's understandable. So what would have been, hit the ground running fundraising in March, April, we pulled back a little bit and thought about what the future of the business could be, and started thinking about what other asset classes we want to go into. Started thinking about if there's an opportunity to buy some of these assets opportunistically, what's that going to mean for us? So a lot of it was focused on the credit line, focusing on the roadmap for the product, building the community during this insane time where we could educate individuals about what these assets mean and what they could mean for the future. Thinking about what happened in 2008, 2009, and trying to create that narrative around our platform as well, as in a worst case scenario. If this isn't a recovery, we are in a situation where asset prices, get depleted a little bit, everything moves down. What do we do for our user base for the future of the product? And then, that kind of set the table for when this bounce back happened. We were in a position to have great new relationships with a bunch of new suppliers. We're able to go into new asset verticals like video games, which is becoming and growing into a big space for us. Focus more heavily on books, which was something that we'd always been sort of paying attention to. We had dabbled into a little bit, but made some great acquisitions. We launched wine, which was the next big shelf for us in terms of the platform, going into an intangible asset class. And then we brought on George Limer, who's our new CEO, who, Chris, Max, and I as a family team have been thinking about what the next stage and the next phase of this business is going to be for a while, talking to our investors and having a conversation about what we wanted to do. And the idea of leaning into media and taking someone who really has an understanding of data and media and put them in a position to bulk up our leadership team and our executive team, so that me, Max, Chris can kind of focus on what we do on a day-to-day from the operations side, while someone's thinking about the big picture at all times, was a big part of that too. So those are the three things that we've really, for the last 3.5 months, felt like it's been a week, but we've been working on it essentially for the better part of a year, positioning us to go into all these new asset verticals with a new face of the company, kind of, figuratively, but not so much literally, bringing in the CEO as well, to make sure that the next phase is about everything, intangible, tangible assets, and all the things that drive value. We live in crazy times, right? But at the same time, the access to information has gotten so much more prevalent and so much easier. So when you have, for me personally, like when you have art or any baseball cards, the things that I like, I try and buy what I like and what I know best. And your whole thing and everyone's thing always is, where do you have the unfair advantage?
Yeah,
we had the unfair advantage at Rally in seeing what was coming with baseball cards and basketball cards and the modern cards. So CLCT is Collectors Universe. It's the grading and the authentication platform of record for basically anything that's meaningful. And there's 3 kind of big names in that space.
They're like the Moody's of this. That seems like a
to some degree, yeah. It's a mix though, but it's also like CLCT is more like the Foxconn to Apple situation, where you can't put anything out without them being a part of it to some degree. They're still the leaders. So if you get a PSA, which is one of their companies, one of their subsidiaries from CLCT, if you get a PSA 10 mint version of any meaningful card, yours is automatically the most valuable. They also control a population report. So when you find out, I have this card, is it important? The first place you typically go, whether you're a novice, a beginner, or an expert, is the PSA's website or one of these other sort of ancillary websites that tell you what's going on with that card, where it lives. They control all the data right now. They control the authentication. They're at the front of a market that when they had, a $200 million market cap, which isn't that long ago, it made no sense that the equivalent of a $300 billion collectibles industry, of which around 100 million is sports memorabilia, and a big subset of that is
100 billion sports memorabilia.
It's so hard to find the real numbers. They include, like, sometimes coins are included on that, and like the Heisman Trophy sitting behind me is a part of that. So there's certain things that make up big chunks of it, but a lot of it is stuff like this. This is the majority of what that sports collectible space looks like. All of it, for the most part, 80% of it goes through PSA in some capacity, whether it's data or the card themselves. So they're also charging crazy rates to make that work. So the margins are crazy. If you want to get your card back in a week, you give them $100. And they're doing this in such a backlog, and they make it clear how much business they're actually doing way before earnings reports. they had no coverage from any meaningful
500 million. Like, I mean, I'm so in love with this. I mean, it's so illiquid. I can't, like, it's like people talk about Bitcoin and I'm like, here's a way to play. And I'm not telling people to buy that stock, but you told me to buy it.
And by the way, yeah, this is not investment advice.
No. I'm just saying, I watched it because I don't even own it. Like, I'm like, well, I own a few shares, like under 100 shares, just for fun, just to like, you know, so I don't get accused of anything, but like, so just how markets can work, right? Like how, you know, you got StockX, Goat just raised a big money, and then you, and is there any other big private companies yet thinking about this space?
I think it's auction houses more than anything else, and that's why something like a collector's universe is interesting, because even the auction houses, they benefit from that. So there's 2 or 3 massive names. When you think about heritage auctions, golden auctions, who we work with, who we're super close with, who now is printing the highest. Every time you see a headline, a LeBron James card sells for $1 million, that's typically golden auctions now. Modern collectibles, though, is a space that's still so untapped, and you have, different than stocks, when you have a Warren Buffett come out and say, you know, I'm dumping all my airlines, then you have Dave Portnoy come out and say, I'm buying all the airlines, there's that polarization, and one's gonna be wrong, one's gonna be right. When it comes to this space, you have the same sort of beginner who comes in and wants a LeBron James card, and they're probably buying the one at the Ask, and they're buying it on eBay. But you know, the people who are typically the gatekeepers in this space, who own the biggest collections and own the auction houses, they're buying that stuff too. The community is all on the same page of, you know, we want best quality examples. There's a finite amount. There's a lot of coiled up demand for the modern stuff. They're all very much a community that are working together to make sure this, what they call the hobby, which is what it's called outside of investments, becomes big. They want it to be big. They want everyone to be involved. And right now it's still such a small group of people who get and understand, you know, baseball, basketball cards. So it's like momentum that is hard to disagree with right now more than anything else in the public markets with like Collectibles Universe, or in the private markets, which is getting like great examples of cards and owning them for the long term.
And so where you've got like, I look across Rally Road, you just did the raise, George from Disney comes in as CEO, the core team's still there, the 3, Max, you, Chris, you know, the retail idea shut down for the moment, right? The store is not open. The company isn't all together in one place. So how are you thinking about the industry going forward and the narrative and where you guys fit in? What's cool? What's cool right now? What's the zeitgeist?
So right now it's a mix. It's like you have these 3 things. You have the access to information, which is something that we want to always be a part of and always want to be able to educate and put the coolest stuff in the app that you didn't know exists. And examples of that are like we have the Macintosh Plus, which is behind me, signed by Steve Jobs and the whole team. And that's
so that's going to go up on the site soon.
Yeah, that's going to be. I think it goes live in 2 weeks. But it's also something that. Like,
what would that be priced at? What would that?
What's up?
Like, what will that be priced at in and around?
Or somewhere around $60,000, I think.
That's so cool.
So that's the first thing. The access to information about stuff like that is what we always want to focus on and what the whole industry wants to focus on. And then you have the access to liquidity, which is something that's becoming more prevalent now. And we have our secondary market that goes through registered broker dealers, but expanding that and making it a little more continuous and giving that exit lane a little bit more prevalence inside the app, which it doesn't have right now. We focus on the IPOs. But then the last part of that is, you know, that's all colliding with this demand for a very finite item, which for us, finding the one of one, the stuff like, you know, a 1937 Heisman Trophy, which there's only 87 that actually exist, of which 11 have ever traded hands. It's contractual that you're not allowed to sell it at this point. I think after 1999, like the Heisman Trust comes after you. So that's always been like those 3 things for us are what we want to focus on, but it's what the whole industry is focusing on too in terms of an investment. You want liquidity, you want all the information you could possibly get, which is now at your fingertips. And you want the ability to get the coolest one-of-one stuff, knowing that they're not making any more of it. So for us, like that's been the focus, but now we're at a point that with the new infusion of capital, with a new credit line, with access to incredible sort of relationships direct with companies like Topps and some of the people around us that want to work and build more with us to hit all those points really, really quickly going forward and do that for a user base that's just already super engaged and wants to be a part of that journey with us. You know what I mean?
And so so they want liquidity. Well, they also want the ability to say, I don't want to own Fracture. I'd like to own it for a week. I think in a perfect world, if I know there's liquidity, I don't want to share it with people. I'm having a party. I want to have that Heisman Trophy at my house. I'll pay the 60 grand, knowing that I may have to sell it for 57 grand on 2 weeks from now. Isn't that what's cool? Is like, instead of like rent the runway, it's rent the memorabilia in a sense, meaning, yeah, as long as there's a market, it's owning it for 6 years and making 10% versus losing 5% and actually having it at my party and knowing I can sell it back on the platform. Is there something to that, or isn't that the true future of this, or no?
I think it works two ways. So you have
Like a Carl Icahn button. I've always wanted a Carl Icahn button where I can just fucking come over the top. Well, something just sold this week, right? That I'm in one of the cars, but
yeah, the 2003 Saline S7 sold this week. It's going through the process right now with a 96% or some crazy number of approval on the from the investors on the sale. But that for us is like, there's two elements to that. You have the utility versus the equity component, and what we've actually seen is that we're starting to get investors on our platform. They kind of, I don't want to say graduated from Robinhood because that's the wrong way to say it, but they realize that alternative assets should be a part of any investment portfolio. And they're doing it in a way where they might get a share of this Mike Trout card that went public today on Rally, and that's the best possible version. There's literally 25 in the world, of which maybe 5 or 6 are graded the way this one is. Getting access to that and spending $250,000 on it is tough. It's a tough ask for anybody. Yeah. Even getting access to it outside of the auction, like to just get your hands on it, is tough. But they will get another version of that card. That's the $100 or $200 version. I think that for us gets more interesting. What we've done recently is we started to make our own collectibles around the individual assets too. So we did, so for like that Heisman, we made like the bronze card, which is essentially our stock certificate. But at the same time, like, it's like a really substantial piece in a collectible. There'll be 100 of these. You could, if you buy a share, you get access to this on checkout. You can buy it and potentially put it in your once. And we did that with like
only the first people get that, because only the first people get that.
Yeah, so it's the idea that we want there to always be a physical piece. At the same time, like, we know that for us and for our investors, making sure that this one, that the $225,000 version is something that's maintained correctly, stored appropriately, insured. It's in a spot where we're taking the best museum quality care of it to make sure that we give it the best chance to appreciate. But there's always we want to always make sure there's a physical component to that. And we always want to make sure that we are educating our investors about what the other sort of cards and the collectibles that live around this are, and give them access to it too. So we'll focus more on that. The rental idea, we throw it around a lot. It's always on the whiteboard. It's not necessarily something that's...
Well, you don't know they're renting it. You don't know they're renting it. It'd just be like, I'm buying it. I want to take delivery. Whoever buys that,
the Carl Icahn thing,
taking delivery.
Yeah, we got to do a better job of that. Right now, it's in the app as like a submission form, and we have a team here that kind of evaluates the offer and makes sure that the cash is available by that buyer.
Yeah.
And make sure that the investors know what's up. But the one-stop get delivery, take physical possession of the option, like that type of thing is happening way more often. We get way more buyout offers, especially on the sports memorabilia stuff, than we have in the past, in recent months at least.
Got it. Very cool. And then what is the one thing, what's coming next that you can tell about that you don't have to worry about competitors, or you're just trying to stay mum about things? What's the coolest thing?
In terms of platform?
Yeah.
I think that, again, like the focus on building that world-class secondary market has always been the focus for us. And for us, a lot of our volume happens in the IPOs because that's what gets people really excited. And making sure that we're giving the same attention from a platform product perspective to the secondary market's like a big part of what we're working on. Other than that, I mean, a lot of what we want to do when we think about intangible assets and think about cash-producing assets has been put on paper, and is Max and the team and our legal team and the regulatory team are working through what that actually looks like right now. So sooner than later, we'll have true intangible assets, cash-producing assets, the stuff that you don't necessarily require educating somebody about where the value is derived from. And that might be real estate. It might be music. It might be some things that, some other people have talked about but not done effectively. We want to make sure we're doing that effectively. So the next big sort of frontier for us will be intangible assets.
All right. I think we covered everything. Did I miss anything? We got the announcement. We've got the Trout car. We've got the trend. Is there something that I've missed?
No, I mean, we're just, we're over here trying to do as much as possible with the coolest possible stuff. This stuff's here right now. It'll get shipped to our storage facility, but the next wave of stuff that comes in will be better than this. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but
You don't know what it's going to be. And is it lightning strikes? Are you out there looking for certain categories? Do you have to be ahead of the curve, or people calling you with stuff and then you say, that's cool?
yeah, I mean, we do a little bit of everything. When we can't get access to something, but we feel like there's a deal to be made, even if it's at an auction, we'll try and buy it. So we miss out on stuff a lot. Like we missed, there was an auction 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and it was based on like a lot of it was New York music, hip hop, and very specific cultural moments from New York in particular. So the notorious B.I.G. Biggie's crown that he wore in a very specific iconic photo. It was a $6 plastic crown that the photographer gave him for the photo shoot. It's been reused everywhere. So anybody that sees the notorious RBG, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg photo, she has that crown on. It's based on this notorious B.I.G. picture. We tried to buy that at auction. It was a Sotheby's auction. We got outbid by $10,000 at the very end. It went for around 500 grand. So anytime we can get access to stuff, it doesn't matter. If we have a formula that speaks to the way it works, more often than not, it comes inbound and from existing relationships, but we always are looking for the stuff that the data can't say this is the right thing to buy, but we know from intuition and from dealing with our user base what people want.
Yeah, like if you fractionalize it, it would work. You just know.
Yeah, and it works if like we do something where if it was that Biggie crown and we're like giving it back to the family, or we're doing some philanthropic element around it, something that really benefits New York at a time when New York gets a lot of negative press and negative attention right now. If we can do something like that, that's like a huge check mark for us in acquiring an asset. So then we're a little bit less discerning about where it comes from and how we buy it.
All right, my man, all the best. Can't wait to see you in New York. And go Rally Road. Have a great weekend.
Go Howard Linsden. I appreciate it, dude.
Don't hang up.